Welcome back. In this video, we'll get the X remove button to work. The only trouble right now is that if we try to define our remove method, how are we going to know what to remove? What are we going to use as the key, the ID that we remove by? We can't use color because it's possible we have two orange boxes, but we need something that we can filter over the state and remove based off of. So let's remedy that. And we could just make a counter, like a variable that we increment one time each time we add a new box and use that as the ID. I like to use the UUID library that I showed you. So I'm going to npm install UUID from a couple videos ago, and I'll be back when it finishes. Okay, so I restarted my server. I have that library now and I can use it. I just have to decide where I should use it. Well, the easiest place is when we're making a new box, we'll just add an ID and pass that into create box. So to use it inside of this file, I need to import it. So import UUID from, and then it's UUID/v4. And now I have access to this function called UUID, and I can just call it. As we saw, if you didn't watch the video on this, I would recommend checking it out. But anyway, this will give us a unique string. So where do we want to use this? Well, right now we're passing state exactly as it is, and there's no reason to add ID into the state because the ID is not going to change. We only need an ID when we're actually submitting this, trying to make a new box. So instead of passing this.state as is, I'm going to make a variable, let's call it new box, and it's going to be an object where we take this.state, we extract all of the properties from it, and then we also add in an ID set to UUID. So this gives us a new ID. This takes the width, the color, and the height, make one object with them, and then we will pass new box in. Perfect. So now if we go back to our box list, I'm going to delete this starting box. We don't need it anymore because we can make new boxes. Let's do a 10 by 4 purple box, add it, and if we go to the box list, we should see that there is a UUID, a unique identifier right here. I think it's universally unique ID is what it stands for. And we have it, but we're not using it. So next, let's get that key warning to go away. So every box that we make, we'll give them a key of box.id, which is what we just set. So now when we make boxes 10, 10, blue, we're not going to get that warning anymore in the console. And each one now has a unique key. Okay, so we can use that in order to remove one of these boxes. The only thing is we actually can't access the key. This is for React purposes only, basically internal use. We can't access it inside of one of these components. So if we wanted to click on the remove button, we can't just grab the key from this component and pass it up. So we're also going to add an ID called box.id. Same idea, it's just a new prop name called ID. So now, inside of our box component, we have a button. And this button, we can click and add an onClick. But what is it going to call? Well, let's define our method in the box list that will remove based off of an ID. So we started with it. It's called remove. It takes an ID. And we're going to set the state. And we're going to update boxes to be this.state.boxes.filter. And we're going to filter based off of box.id not equaling the ID that was passed in. So make a new array containing the boxes who did not contain the ID that was passed in. All right, so remove is done. And we could do the same pattern where we bind it up here in the constructor of the parent, and then we pass it in as a prop without an arrow function. We pass it in here, and then in box.js, we would add an onClick, and this onClick would then have its own handler, which would then call whatever we pass down, remove. However, just for variety's sake, I am going to use an arrow function inline just to show you the two ways of doing this, so we don't need to bind in the constructor. Instead, down here, for each box, we can pass in a prop called remove box, and instead of doing this .remove, where we'll run into issues, we'll pass in an arrow function where we do this .remove box.id. So we're passing down this nice pre-made function called remove under the name remove box. And then inside of box.js, when you click, all that we have to call is this.props.remove remove box. So we don't have to do any binding down here. We don't have to create a constructor. It definitely is shorter as far as the amount of syntax. But I do like to avoid putting arrow functions in line, but I'm going to keep this so you have a contrast of the two different options. Here, we bound in the component, in the constructor, we pass down create box, and then inside of the new box form, we had to create handle submit, and it calls this .props.create box with the argument. Here, with the individual remove box, we're passing it down as a prop and creating a new function inline here, and then inside of our box, we simply call that prop. So let's verify that it does actually work. Let's do another purple box. If I click X, it's being removed. All right, and it's always good just to check our state and make sure that the state is empty currently. Boxes is empty. Awesome. So let's add a couple more boxes. We're basically done at this point, but let's just verify it. So we've got, let's do 2 and 6 and teal, really using the same color options. We click, boxes is updated. Once again, it's updated. All right, that's all there is to the color box maker thingy.